Hi there. Recently, we've been answering a lot of questions about S corporations and providing tax tips for S corporations too. But there's one topic I think is worth a little bit more time and attention: reasonable compensation. Now, we've all heard the rule of thumb that if you have an S corporation, you need to pay yourself a reasonable compensation through payroll, and that's correct. But let's look at how the IRS looks and determines when you need to pay yourself a reasonable compensation. This should answer the question you might have of, what if my S corporation didn't earn any money in this year or earned only a little bit this year? This answers that question. Now, the IRS has a list of criteria they look at to help determine what reasonable compensation should be. That's not answering this question. We're looking at when you need to pay yourself a reasonable salary. So the IRS has a complicated wording for it. The compensation received by a shareholder shall never exceed the amount of cash or properties received or receivable by the shareholder. But if a shareholder receives cash or properties or is receivable by a shareholder, then reasonable compensation must be paid. What does that mean? Well, let's look at it this way. Your S corporation earns a net income during the year. Let's use an easy example and say your net income is $10,000 after your revenue minus expenses, ignoring salary for now. $10,000. Your reasonable compensation cannot be more than $10,000. You're limited. Now, that's in a year where you have only a little bit of income. Let's look at a year where you have a lot of income. Let's say it's $200,000 of net income before we look at salary. There's $20,000 received or receivable by the shareholder. That means your reasonable compensation can be up to that $200,000. You'll probably want it less though, but it can be up to that amount. What we're looking at here is in the year an S corporation has a low year or even a negative year, you are not required to pay yourself the full reasonable salary that you determined for a good year. If your reasonable salary is $60,000, that's great, but you had a bad year. You earned $10,000. Your reasonable salary is limited to $10,000. You had a really bad year and were negative. You don't pay yourself any reasonable salary. So that is just the tip of the iceberg for S corporations and reasonable compensation. If you have more questions, feel free to comment, DM me, and I'll get in contact with you and we'll schedule a time to have a call and talk about your business and more tax strategies. Visit my website at latercpa.com and ping me if you have any more tax questions. Bye.